Hello, everyone who has joined us today for our Workflow in Practice webinar. So today we're going to be running through some workflow stuff, so digital workflows that you might be able to use in your legal practice. If you have any questions along the way, please just post them in the Q&A on the side of the screen there. This is a non-interactive session today, so we're running this as a live event over Teams, which means that I can't see anybody who's joined, so you're all anonymous. But if you want to ask a question, feel free to ask one along the way. So the first thing we're going to go through is why you should implement digital workflow systems. And as you can see from the slide, it's about saving time and making money, because of course that's what we all want to do. Digital workflow is great. I've been doing digital workflow for a long time, and if you ever want someone to consult on doing digital workflow, find a lazy person, which is me. I'm inherently a lazy person. When the system can do something for me, that's far more beneficial than me having to manually do that. So whatever that business process happens to be, if I can have the system do that for me automatically, that's obviously substantially better than me having to do that. But how does that save you time and make you money? Well, at the end of the day, there's a bunch of processes that happen around your legal practice. And they might be related to client matters, or they might be related to the business side of a legal practice. And there's a bunch of processes that we need to go through. And this is going to be focused particularly around those non-billable items that you do. So it might be related to business development or HR or finance or some of that back office stuff, your operations that are going on, because inherently that will make you more money because you need to pay less for people who aren't making money to do those tasks, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. So today's agenda, we'll do a bit of an introduction, defining workflow, essentially what workflow is when we talk about workflow, what we're referring to, feasibility, so the feasibility of your firm or practice being able to implement or execute some digital workflow projects within your practice, delivery, so what the delivery process looks like, and obviously then we'll talk about the results. So implementing digital workflow systems can substantially reduce the personnel contributions to completing workflows in your practice. So again, this just comes back to automate those tasks or those processes that don't inherently make you money or provide a better client service, and that can save you time. I know particularly for me, one of the most frustrating things over my career has been, okay, hey Rob, we need you to do this thing that the technology could do automatically, and it distracts me or disrupts me from doing things that I think are productive, which is obviously working with my clients and doing billable work. And I'm sure if you're working in a legal practice, you will understand the same challenge. So we need to talk about workflow. So what are we talking about when we talk about workflow? What is workflow? Now, there's a distinct differentiation, or at least we believe there is, between business process and workflow. So the business process is what needs to be done. So what do we actually need to do to get from point A to point B? And that is in terms of we need to collect this information, for example, and that information needs to go into this system. The workflow refers to how we do it. So how we do that process, who's doing it, what's doing it, be it a person, be it a system, be it automated, whatever it happens to be. That's what we talk about when we talk about workflow. Now, the way that I like to talk about it quite commonly is workflow is a series of work steps. So in the process, we have a series of steps in the process, but the work step is what portion of work needs to be completed at that step in the process, being a work step. And then within each work step, we have work step tasks. So what are the tasks that need to be done as part of that work step? Work steps are commonly assigned to an individual, so to a person or to a team or to a system that will complete those tasks. And once those tasks have been completed, it can move to the next work step, which is commonly aligned to the next step in the process. And we'll have a bit more of a look through that as we go through. So where should you start? If you're talking about implementing digital workflow into your legal practice, what are some things that you should consider applying digital workflow to? So we touched on, things that aren't inherently related to client matters. Obviously, there are direct costs via wages, through to the practice, but they can be intrusive or disruptive for fee earners as well if they need to be a participant in that business process. If it's all being done manually, that's obviously an interruption or a distraction. So some examples that we're going to run through today is just some pretty basic stuff that we've knocked together. Some customer onboarding, leave requests is a good one. I know that plenty of firms have challenges with that. What we can do is some around contract expiries and renewals as well. So if you had a contracts register, we can automate the notification to say that, hey, this is coming up due for renewal. Stationary orders, so getting those stationary orders in, getting them approved, which cost center they're going to, all those types of things. Knowledge articles is another good one. There's a bit of a process around that, so that we can provide some transparency and some accountability around having those things done. And really just any business process. So everything that you see here today, we've built. So we've just sort of put it together using the tools that we have available to us. If you can find or think of a business process that has a document or a piece of data and it needs to go through a process within the business, be it collection of more information, approval from somebody, validation of information, all of those types of things, they're things that can go into a digital workflow. So the other thing you need to determine is the feasibility. So the first thing is, can you actually digitize it? Now, most things now can be digitized. I've been living digital for more than 10 years. I don't have a printer at home. I've never had a printer in my office. I'm a bit anti-printing paper because I like the convenience of just having everything at my fingertips. So being just contained within my device, all my stuff sits in the cloud, super, super easy. But you have to ask the question, can you actually digitize and is it feasible to do that? Can your system support it? So one of the things that tends to happen when we look at digital workflow projects is a broken workflow from non-integrated systems. And what we mean by that is potentially what will happen is, okay, in a business process, we have information come into one system and we need it to go across into the next system and we need to go across into the next system. By having those systems integrated, we can actually push those pieces of information through. We can push that process ahead. If we have individual or separated disparate systems, that's obviously not going to flow through. You end up with broken workflow where you need personnel contribution to that business process in terms of those work steps that need to be done. Someone needs to copy this over to this system, someone needs to copy to that system. So having integrated systems is really good. So if you're thinking about implementing new technology systems into your practice, always look for systems that will integrate to the systems that you already have. Do you have the capability is the next thing. I'd like to think that you do. The ability to deliver digital workflow is often people say that it's a technologist thing to do. You know, people who are in tech have the capability to do it. I don't agree. I think digital workflow is best executed, maybe not delivered or configured within a system, but best executed by people who understand business process. I'm sure in many legal practices, it doesn't matter which area of practice you work in, understanding a business process and how something needs to get from point A to point B and what the steps are that happen within that process is something that you would have your head well wrapped around. So you'd be able to define that. Okay, what's the next step in the process? What are the tasks that we need to do? Move on to the next thing. So the ability to document and define what those things are, you can essentially hand that over to someone who specializes in configuring technology and go build that. That's the hardest bit. So if you have the ability to deliver that and hand that over, that's always helpful and makes the process very easy. The other thing that it doesn't mention there, apart from capability, is capacity. So capacity is always one of the biggest challenges in a legal practice. That's particularly related to time. So do we have the time to commit to making these things better and automating these things? So when we talk about resources, we talk about capacity and capability. So if you do have the capability, but maybe you don't necessarily have the capacity to do it, or vice versa, that's where you could potentially bring in someone like ServiceScaler or myself. We consult on this stuff all the time, so this is kind of what we do. But in terms of the feasibility of it, you need to assess whether you have the resources that are going to be available to deliver those types of projects. The delivery. So we always say that in the delivery process, start with something simple. Identify a process that's relatively simple. Build the capability to complete the process manually. So when we talk about that, we're talking about digitizing a process. So make it digital. And then do that process manually. So if I process this transaction manually, if I have somebody step in and complete that work step and those tasks and do that manually, that's where we want to be to make sure that that process works. It addresses all of the criteria and is actually going to flow through to the end of that business process. Complete that manually, identify the work step tasks that the system can handle. So it might be copying data to another system, it might be adding something to a calendar, it might be updating a status or a flag on something, right? Those relatively simple things, but you start taking those tasks away and that process starts to become automated. We then test the automated functions to make sure they do what we want it to do, and then we rinse and repeat that for other business processes. So if you start with something simple, you'll develop your skills, you'll develop out your capability, and obviously your capacity to deliver, and then you'll be able to work your way through other business processes and start automating things around the practice. So let's look at an example. So for those of you who registered, and I can see that there's a few attendees here today, we actually automated the registration process for this. So you filled in a form, and then when you filled in that form, you would have got a meeting request that essentially booked you in. It sent you the link to this live event. Here's what we did in the background to automate it. So we can see that this is in Power Automate. So this is in Office 365. This is a tool that's available if you have a business standard subscription or above. So this is stuff that is already available to you more than likely. The trigger was completed form. So someone submits a form. The action was to get the responses, so the details from the responses. What we did was use your email address, plug that in to send the meeting requests. That obviously came from me, had a link to our live event. And then we created a lead into our CRM. So if you were going to apply this same principle into your practice and you ran an event, and you went, okay, well, these attendees are essentially going to be leads for us and we're going to follow them up because, we might be able to talk to them about stuff. We might be able to help them with things. That's how it would work. So since creating this, I haven't had to touch it. We obviously have the attendees here today that will flow through into our leads automatically. So very, very simple. So let's have a look at a few other examples. So we're just going to touch on, and we've just quickly put these together, just some examples of how these things might work. So just client onboarding, contract renewals, leave requests, stationary orders and knowledge articles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to my other screen so that we can have a bit of a look here at some of these processes. So the first one we're going to start with is new client onboarding. So we actually have this set up for, we use it internally. So I've just kind of replicated it across into this environment for new client onboarding. So what we have here is a link that will take you to a form, a digital form, the same as you would have seen for the registration for the event. And we'll fill in some information here. So the business name can be Rob's Widgets. Entity name, an ABN number, the address, you have to bear with me while I go through this process. My full name, now we're in our test tenant here at the moment, so this is not my actual email address, but it will allow us to receive emails. And the billing email address, so that's the type of information we might want to capture in a new client onboarding, and that will go through there. So what's happening in the background? So we've collected that information, and what it's going to do is it's going to create a record in our system. So that might be in your practice management system, that might be in your CRM, that might be just in a a register of contact information. So we've created one here in an application called SharePoint that is just a list with our customer register. So we can see in here Rob's widgets, we've just captured that information. So because that's raw data, we can use that. If we go back across to our tenant here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my emails, and my screen's gone a bit dark here, so I'm just going to open Outlook. And it's actually generated and sent a couple of emails. So we've automated this process. So one might go back to the sales team or to the fee earner who brought that client on board. So Rob's widgets have completed their onboarding form. Accounts have been notified. Cool. So we've also automated the accounts team. A new account creation task has been created. So we've created a task from this as well. Please complete that ASAP. And we've also sent a customer notification. So, hi Rob, thanks for completing the onboarding, etc., etc. You can book in for your onboarding session via this link. So if we open that link in a new tab, this is Microsoft Bookings. So we do a lot of this stuff as well for a free digital workflow consultancy. That's very giving. We can see here that I'm not available, but we may be able to pick one of our other resources and we can book in that time. So that's the customer experience that they're going to go through, which is nice. So one of the other things that happened is we saw that there was a task had been created. So if we go to tasks, we're in the browser at the minute, but if you use full Outlook as in the desktop application, it will just come up in your task list. So what we can see here is we have a couple of tasks. So we can see set up billing for Rob's widgets. And if we jump into that, we can see that the relevant information has been sent through to accounts to provision that account. So it's just an example of something basic that we can go through to send information to the right people, to set up tasks that need to be done so nothing gets forgotten. And there's also some reporting. This is all driven from Power Automate. There's also some reporting that can show where things are up to, what stages things made it to give us that visibility over those business processes as well. So I'm going to jump back to home here so we can look at another example. Might be contract expiry was quite a good one. So we can see in here in our contracts register, I've just created a couple of different contracts, just the party, so who the party is, what it's regarding, consulting services. We also have a contract expiry date. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to update the contract expiry date. So I've actually configured a workflow that says 3 days from contract expiry, send me a notification that it's expiring. So something relatively basic, but quite helpful so that we don't miss anything along the way. Now, I've updated both of those. I'm just going to jump back into Power Automate. So we're going to have to kick this process off manually. Now, I can show you why that is the case. So we have contract expiry upcoming. But if we have a look at it, there is a recurrence trigger. And at the moment, it just is set to run at 3 o'clock every day. I'm not going to leave you here until 3 o'clock. So what we'll do is we'll jump back in to the other screen and we'll actually run that. So we won't wait until 3. We'll run that now. And what should happen is I should receive a notification that shows me 2 contracts at 3 days out from expiring. Close some of my other tabs. I've got things open everywhere here. I'll jump back into Outlook. And what I can see here, so at 3 o'clock today, if I'd let that run on its own, it would have sent me a notification saying, hey Rob, you have asked to be reminded 3 days before contract expiry date. So I can send us notifications about things expiring, for example, and we obviously have a link here directly through to that contract so that we can see it. So super simple. Something else that that people love is the leave request. So the process for submitting a leave request and having them come through on a calendar. So we've automated this entire process as well. So we can see here that we have upcoming leave requests. This is again in SharePoint. So we use this as sort of our aggregation for data in Office 365. But we can fill out a leave request form. And what's going to happen in the background, so I'm going to say that it's me. I want some annual leave. I want it starting from, let's say, next Monday the 3rd, and we'll run it through to Friday the 7th. I'm going to approve my own leave because I'm cool like that. And that's done. So what's going to happen in the background is a request will be sent through. So an approval request saying, hey, Rob's requested leave. Someone will need to approve that. So in the background, that will actually come through onto the leave requests register. So we have a leave request register here, so we can see that that's come through there and keeps the dates. So there may be a possibility to push that over to a payroll system if you needed to do that with some integration. Going back to, hey, integrated solutions are better. That's why. So we may be able to push that across there. But what we can see here is Rob annual leave. So we can see that, hey, Rob's made a request. That link will just take us through to that record that we saw there before, but we might want to see who else is on leave. So we can actually jump across to our group calendar if I go to the right spot here. And it's going to load who's on leave. So I can see that there's somebody on leave there at the moment. Let's jump across to next month for this week. And it looks like I'm already on annual leave, but I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to approve my leave anyway. So that will double up in there. So having that group leave calendar, being able to check that, having a register of historical leave requests that have come through into the system. We can do that from there. This can also be delivered through via Teams as well. So if you're a Microsoft Teams user, all of these requests can be delivered through Teams for approvals. So I'm just going to OK that, submit it off, and it can go on its way. What's going to happen in the background, it's going to essentially send me a meeting request because we were using bookings before, which you saw, my online calendar system. I need to block out that time so people can't book me, so it automatically sends me that. It has also updated the leave calendar, which we were looking at just before that already had my time in there. But if we go back to the home page here, we will also see that in upcoming leave requests, it's dropped that in there as well. So we've just automated this to essentially populate that data across to places that are going to be relevant for people within our team to be able to see. So we're running a little bit short on time here. So we'll go through very, very quickly and have a look at a stationary order. Again, it's going to be a similar process. What do we want? Give me a description, a quantity, and a cost center that it needs to be charged to. A request will go off. I am going to approve it myself in this instance, but we can send that off. That'll then go to a purchasing register, which we have set up in here for stationary orders. That will come through to a list. So for the accounts team or the procurement team, once it's been approved, it'll appear on this list and whether it's been fulfilled or not. And say there was 20 items in there. Okay, we submit an order off to our stationery provider, and we go, yeah, that's all good. We're fulfilled. Yes, that's all been fulfilled, and that's done and out of the way. So we can start keeping a register of all of these things and give the ability for our personnel on the ground to essentially be able to request, approve, and track all of these things as they go through. Another one that I know is a big deal for legal practices is around blog articles and what you need to do there. So you can see here we've created a blog articles register. It has some statuses there, draft for review, who it's assigned to, and what the due date is. You can see it's coming up as required info, but we might be able to build a little flow that just says, okay, well, if that's been assigned to somebody and has a due date, so it's been assigned to me, we have a due date, we might be able to automate the process here. If I click on the right thing. So we can see send to planner and assign. So planner is another free application or included application in an Office 365 subscription. So again, I've got too many things running, hosting an event, it's a little bit slower than normal. but I'll just run that flow, and all that's done is drop that into Planner as a task. So we can see here, let's drop that through, blog that needs to be written, and in the background, it will automatically send notifications and do all those bits and pieces too. So these are some, again, just some of the types of things that we would be able to build using digital workflow that might assist around your practice. Okay, so to see the results, it's simple. The more workflows you automate, the greater the results. Just define them, deliver them, and then get the results. There's obviously a process of refinement that you can go through as things change. We understand that the process itself might not be malleable, but the workflow itself, how it gets delivered, can obviously change as time progresses and the things that need to be done. So you can obviously jump back in and edit and update those things to improve it where you see an opportunity to do so. So that brings us to the end of our presentation today. I hope that it was informative and we're able to give you some ideas for things that you might be able to do within your practice. I can't see any new questions popped up that we wanted to publish through. So I will assume that we're all good and we're all going to deliver our own workflows in our practices. But a little more seriously, if you do have questions about it, I'm sure that everybody who's attended today, you'll have my email address. I sent you a meeting request. Feel free to drop me an email, give me a call. Happy to have a chat to you about it. And I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.